Hey everyone, Mia here from Resonance Astrology, and welcome to my channel. And if you're new here, welcome to my channel as well. On this channel, we talk about weekly overviews. We also do horoscopes, and I kind of love diving into the horoscopes of the planets retrograding back to their former signs. So this is what we're going to do today. Okay, we're going to talk about Uranus in Gemini, but we're going to also talk and kind of recap of what Uranus's journey going retrograde back into Taurus is also going to be like, because there is some final lessons and things we have to go through. So this video is going to be about the horoscopes, but I'm also going to do like a brief recap of like what is Uranus? Like what is the archetype of Uranus? What does Uranus generally bring into our lives in astrology, globally, all of that. The outer planets have to do with a lot of global events and global shifts. And we've definitely seen a surge, in AI, things like that, technology, communication. So this is also kind of what we're going to talk about in the beginning. But, if you're impatient, I fully get it. The timestamps are going to be down in the description below, and you can go check out for your rising sign. And I'll see you soon. I have a presentation up, so you will be able to see everything that I'm saying and have some keywords. And I can see you guys soon. Okay, so I have the presentation open, and we can dive right in. Let's first talk about Uranus and kind of the archetypes that Uranus brings. There's definitely, I think all the outer planets are wild cards, but if there's one planet that embodies wild card energy the most, it's definitely Uranus because it's very unpredictable and full of like disruption and disruptive changes. So whenever Uranus transits hit our natal chart, usually it's hard to even say exactly what's going to happen because it's going to be unexpected. But of course, if we look at, and we're going to see that later on in the horoscopes, right? Like if Uranus is traveling through the seventh house, we can probably predict that there's going to be unpredictable and disruptive changes when it comes to relationship in the seventh house. So we can kind of predict the unpredictable, let's just put it that way. There is also often a breakup of structures. So if anything has been stagnant, well, Uranus is basically the antithesis to this. Uranus is all about like innovation and doing things differently, kind of a bit opposite towards Saturn. Um, and so, Uranus chimes in and breaks up old structures. And I'm sure whatever house Uranus has been traveling through your house in Gemini, the sign of Gemini, it's definitely been breaking up old structures. Uranus definitely also the archetype of rebellion, of independence, and of freedom. Richard Tarnas, actually, and I'll be looking over here, but just because I have a few extra notes on my own, but Richard Tarnas really promotes the Promethean myth towards Uranus and like draws the comparison between the Titan Prometheus and the planet Uranus. Prometheus famously, deceiving the Olympian god Zeus, who then punished him by withholding fire, but Prometheus proceeded to steal that fire from Zeus to give to mankind. So Prometheus, also known to be the great awakener, the god of fire, and the supreme trickster. And he is definitely associated with like rebellion, originality, unconventionality, and independence. So oftentimes when Uranus is traveling through our charts in the house that it is currently present, it is kind of inviting us to look at things from a different perspective, or all of a sudden we get urges. Let's take the example of the seventh house again. All of a sudden we want to try different relationship roles or unconventional ways of being in relationships, or the partners we may bring into our lives embody this Uranian expression. So this is what can happen with Uranus transits. Again, reform and revolution. Uranus revolutionizes. There is also technological and scientific progress that is definitely associated with Uranus and innovation, always innovation. And there's also like the psychological, process of individuation and awakening again, because it's like the Prometheus, the awakener. Yes, and oftentimes Uranus also serves as a bit of a destabilizing force, like it kind of disrupts, so it destabilizes things, which can be unpleasant, can of course also be very necessary. But it is usually unpleasant, most of us, depending on which, signs are very prominent, maybe you have a very prominent fixed sign chart. Change can maybe be especially difficult for you, and then Uranus chimes in, can sometimes be a bit hard. So, but these are kind of the archetypes just to go over all of that. um Let me go towards the next slide. Yes, so I also just wanted to kind of go over the like similarities, or I mean not really the similarities, but just like the polar opposites almost is actually the right word. And comparison. That was the word that I was searching for. Of like Uranus and Taurus versus Uranus and Gemini, just because these signs are pretty different in their expressions. And we have been, Uranus moved into Taurus back in 2018 briefly, and then fully went into Taurus beginning of 2019, March of 2019. And ever since then, we had Uranus and Taurus. And Taurus is yin or feminine fixed earth. And so Uranus does not really do well there in that sign of Taurus. That is so much about stability and reliability. That's not Uranus, okay, at all. Taurus is so much about like steadfast investment, material gain, and resources, devotion and care, and all about like earthly bodily pleasures and being in the moment and being present and taking time. Uranus is not about taking time, okay? Um, so actually, some people even believe that Uranus is in its fall or detriment in the sign of Taurus. So here we have it, definitely not the easiest place that Uranus has been going through. And comparing it to Gemini, as a young, masculine, double-bodied air sign, very changeable, adaptable, we can already see here that there is much more similarity with Uranus and Gemini, because Mercury and Uranus have some sort of similarity. Some also believe that Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. Um, Debatable, but I can see where people are coming from when they say this, because both of these kind of have to do with like the mind and innovation. There's lots of the curious energy that Gemini brings kind of really resonates with Uranus. So it would make sense that Uranus would do a lot better in the sign of Gemini. That doesn't mean it's easier for us because it's a lot more ungrounded, okay? And Gemini is, again, duality in thought and intellect, a lot about like data collection and analysis, learning and networking, things that Uranus also loves, communication systems, writing, speaking, and language. So, again, just like this brief comparison that we have between both of these signs, where Uranus has been traveling and where Uranus is intersecting this time around, because Uranus will be traveling back. In a few slides, we will also go through the timeline, okay? So if you want to know the exact timeline of when these transits are happening, just stay tuned for a bit longer. Yes, I also wanted to briefly touch on the collective themes, because the outer planets usually, they're outer planets for a reason, okay? They're not the inner planets. So when the outer planets are doing things, they are usually doing a lot of collective, like they bring up a lot of collective themes. A lot of mundane astrology is focused on outer planetary transits and what they are doing. So again, there's no coincidence that a lot of collective themes have been emergent ever since Uranus has moved into Gemini. But again, as you might know, guys, this year Neptune also moved signs. Okay, Saturn moved signs. Saturn is on an outer planet, but still one of the more slower moving planets. And first year that we have Pluto completely in the sign of Aquarius. So there are big, big, big collective changes going on. And all the other planets are actually now in positions where they are supporting each other. So let's not forget that. There are a lot of new things. It is overwhelming. Okay, I completely get it. At the same time, I also want to mention they are sextiling or trining each other. Aquarius and Aries are in a sextile relationship towards each other. Aries and Gemini are in a sextile relationship towards each other, and Aquarius and Gemini are in a trine relationship towards each other. These are beneficial aspects. So, even though it is a bit overwhelming and we are most definitely entering a new era, an era that is filled with fire and air, very young, masculine dominated signs, they are supportive. Okay, so there is support along the way. And I think what Uranus especially is bringing is solutions to problems we didn't even know we had. And so, let's just kind of dive into the themes here a bit more. There's a revolution around gender expression, definition, and embodiment. We have already been seeing this for a while. Um, Interestingly enough, a lot of Gen Z people have the ones that are in the beginning have Uranus in Aquarius. So they're getting a Uranus trine as well to their natal Uranus. And this is kind of the generation that is known for, not conforming to gender stereotypes and the way that they're defining themselves. And I think that's just going to continue even more globally. Developments in transhumanism and biotechnology, okay? Uranus innovates things. Advancements in AI and robotics. We have already been seeing these, okay? Like, there's like a whole video I could probably make on this. But what I have found interesting that this person, which, gosh, I forgot the name right now. I didn't write it in my notes, sadly. But people call him like the godfather of AI. And I was looking at his chart. We don't have an AA rating, but he has natal Uranus in Gemini. So, the person that is called the godfather of AI natally has this placement. So, there's going to be such an acceleration in AI and all of that. And, transhumanism is a philosophical ideology that advocates for the advancement of humanity through converging technologies and AI. So it's interesting where things will lead. And I just want to say, I'm talking about all of this in a very non-biased way, non-opinionated way. Okay, I'm being truly Swiss neutral here right now. Um, and just presenting you things as they are, because I think it's important to look at things as they are. We all have our opinions and feelings towards all of this, but let's just, accept that this is how the planets are expressing themselves. And, for whatever reason, we are alive right now to witness all of this. And I certainly, personally, don't think it's all bad. It's exciting and terrifying. That's what I've been saying for years. Advancements in travel and aviation. Gemini is an air sign. So there is, and it's ruled by Mercury, which has all to do with travel. So there's definitely going to be innovative advancements in how we travel, fly. At the same time, flying and all of these transportation technologies could also be disrupted. There's probably going to be a lot more flight accidents, and we might see really um, I don't know the right words for that specific word, but the basically there has been more and more flights and airplanes flying, which has led to complete disruption because everything is available all the time. And we might see the after effects of all of this. And yeah, there might be some changes and all of that. Disruption, revolution, and communication, learning, and thinking, like 100%, it's like, what are thoughts? What does it mean to think freely, to form an opinion that is not biased? All of that so much in the limelight. School systems. What does it mean to learn something? All of that so much in the limelight and disruption as well. Changes in social media. Gemini is very much a sign of social media. Aquarius, I would say too. So there is something going on. Okay, the World Wide Web has a lot to do with Aquarius because it kind of was founded and started existing when Saturn was in Aquarius. So there are changes that are about to happen, heightened awareness and anxiety of transitional states as systems and technology rapidly shift. At the same time, this transit is very anxiety inducing. If we don't have tools to ground ourselves to stay in reality, so easily to land to anxiety, and be just scared that there is so much transitional energy that is going on. So it's super important to ground yourself, guys. Very, very, very important. And just realize, the world isn't online. Okay, there is a real life out there. And it's just so easy to get into doom scrolling when Uranus is in Gemini. It's just going to be accelerated even more. And the effects of that. Society responding in a polarized ways to new technological developments. That's the thing that always happens with Uranus, because Uranus is Prometheus, the awakener. And the story has to do with fire. And back then, when we go way, way, way back, when fire first came about, it was exciting. At the same time, it was also terrifying. I'm not saying that fire is a technology, so to say, but it was definitely a new invention that excited a lot of people, at the same time also scared a lot of people because it made us aware of new threats. Before fire, there wasn't a threat of villages burning down. Now there was fire, it could warm us, it could cook us food, all amazing things. At the same time, it also had a destructive factor. So I do think we have to keep this in mind also with things like AI. I think it's a lot about how we use things. Um, yeah, I'll leave it at that to not dwell too much. Let me just see. Yeah, personal themes. Yeah, in your personal chart, there's going to be a revolution in thinking and mental processing, the need for intellectual stimulation at the same time. Again, also easily to get into information overload. We're not meant to know so much about everyone all the time. For real, guys. Okay, it's completely okay to mute your notifications, to take a social media break. I think I've been saying this for years. I think taking social media breaks is gonna be something that is going to be very common. We're going to look at it like taking holidays, and it's going to be normal to just log off for a while. Because if you've been thinking, it's very, have you noticed how harder it is to like shut down, especially if you also have work that involves like being on social media or just on your computer? Like it's so hard to like shut down and make this transition from like, now I'm off of work, now I'm having fun, because it's like everything is on this gadget. It's like work is there, checking email, you can constantly check emails. Then you're on social media and it gets even more confusing because it's like, one story is about something completely sad. The next story is about something completely funny. And then the next one is tragic. The other one is educational. That is a lot for our nervous systems. Way too much for our nervous systems. And the constant, like, keeping up with people you barely know, that is just not natural to us and to our systems. So, again, there is an urge for intellectual stimulation, but it can also easily get into information overload when Uranus is in Gemini and when Pluto is in Aquarius. I do think that Saturn and Neptune in Aries are going to be very much on the backbone of being like, hey, let's get back to reality. Let's get back to the real world. Let's get back to tangible things in real life connections. I do think, again, they're going to work together in a good way, but it is up to us ultimately to decide. And that is also Saturn and Neptune and Aries. It's like our self-responsibility in all of this. Because we decide at the end of the day how much we're on social media. But I get it, it's hard. It's very addictive. Okay, underrated addiction for sure. That is that people very much underestimate. Bursts of innovative ideas and insights. It's very much that transit that wakes you up in the middle of the night and you're getting these downloads and all of that. That's going to be interesting. Disruptions in communication and learning, for sure. The same thing I mentioned before, schooling system and just the way we get into informations and what we learn and how we learn, just going to be a lot different. Individualistic self-expression, especially through like words and how we show up, how we speak. Heightened anxiety and intellectual rigidity. Um, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Then we have the transit timeline, which I think is important just to kind of keep that in mind. Uranus entered Gemini July 8, 2025 this year. And now, just a few days ago, Uranus stationed retrograde in the sign of Gemini on September 6, 2025. This is why we're doing the horoscopes right now. Uranus is gonna move back, retrograde back into Taurus on November 9th of 2025. And then Uranus is going to station direct in Taurus on February 4th, 2026. And then Uranus re-enters Gemini April 27th, 2026, and it stays there until May 23rd, 2033. So a long time now. Uranus stays in a sign for around 7 years. Okay, Uranus is like 7 year cycle planet. Yes, and we're gonna get one last batch of Uranus and Taurus pretty much from November 9th till around April 26th. So yeah, a few more months to go back to the lessons. Um, with Uranus, there isn't so much that we even have to do. Uranus usually throws things at us if we want to or not. At least that's how I noticed it. Even if you're hiding inside your house, like you can't escape Uranus. Like there's maybe other planets you can escape, but not Uranus. Uranus is gonna knock at your door in an unexpected way. So yeah, but this is a transit timeline. And yeah, now we're gonna get into horoscopes. There's also something I do want to mention here at this point that I was supposed to do this episode with a friend of mine, Tiziana. Sadly, due to personal reasons, she cannot attend and do this. We were supposed to do it last week, but then I had an unexpected health issue come up, literally when, Uranus was stationing retrograde, actually, which was kind of hilarious. Couldn't do the Uranus episode, for an unexpected health issue reason. Um, but yeah, but this time around, Tiziana cannot join, and I just wanted to say that because a lot of the notes were notes that she did, and I absolutely just want to credit her. She said it's like you don't have to do this, Amia, but I'm like, heck no. Like you did so much, and I really want to credit her. I'm also gonna shout her out at the end, at the last slide. I just really want to make sure you know that, guys, okay? Like we both added our notes here, and a lot of them are also really thanks to her. So I absolutely want to credit her in this and highly encourage you to follow her. Amazing astrologer from South Africa, Cape Town. Um, yes. So now let's dive in to the rising signs. Let me just take a sip of water before I fully start here. So, Aries sun and Aries risings, um, Uranus has been going through your third house and is now also going to go retrograde back to your second house. Here on this side, you can see both of these houses and some keywords highlighted. Um, so, Uranus going back to your second house is definitely, processing shifts and changes around your personal resources and livelihood. The second house has a lot to do with your like possessions, and you've probably undergone a complete revolution over the course of this transit. Like either you've accumulated more possessions or you got rid or donated some of your possessions. Maybe things were weighing you down, and with Uranus in Taurus, you made a switch to a more minimalistic lifestyle, a more slow lifestyle, for example, or you upgraded some of your possessions. Um, a second house is also like how you nourish yourself because it has to do with values. And so with Taurus especially, it probably was also like a theme of which foods you are consuming. So you may have gone on a journey of reinventing your relationship towards food. Or you may have developed like an allergy or sensitivity to certain foods, which catalyze the change in diet. For example, um, and with regards to like financial resources, you may have decided to ask for a significant raise at your job, and this gave you a boost in your lifestyle and increased your material security and consequently your possessions. Or again, there might have been like a lot of destabilizing changes with regards to income that sparked changes in what you value. Because again, Uranus can unexpectedly shift our values when it is traveling through the seventh house and what we deem as important or not important. Especially when it's in Taurus, that is very materialistic. So I wouldn't be surprised if you have been on some like shaky ground and changed in what like truly matters in your life and where you want to head, where you want to go, what do you want to accumulate. Maybe you had this dream of investing for a future house or something that you want to buy a property, and all of a sudden you're like, actually, that's not really that important to me anymore. So that's definitely something that might have shifted over the past 7 years. Yeah, and just like material security as well, there might have been like unexpected gains, unexpected losses as well. And when the retrograde period is wrapping up, those changes are making its final adjustments. And now, Uranus has been traveling in Gemini in your third house, revolutionizing your mind, your communication, and your local environment. The third house very much is the fish tank environment. So it's everything that is nearby. Like it's not our physical house, it's everything that is like kind of outside. So it's like our neighborhoods. And our daily commutes because usually we're often commuting and doing these small walks around our neighborhood. So there could be some changes in, again, how you are showing up in your local neighborhood. Maybe you want to join some like local clubs or charities or just like because like it's very mercurial, like debate clubs, I don't know, like whatever you have in your local environment, right? But something that is very like social, maybe like a social club. Maybe you go jogging with people. Maybe you find a new yoga studio. Maybe you find a new favorite coffee place you can go and work. All of that is very much third house. It's changing how you view your local nearby environment and what you do and how you show up. Maybe new neighbors come into your life. And they change a lot of things in how you are living. In good and bad ways, could be disruptive, in a negative way, but could also be disruptive in a good way. Um, so, and third house also having to do with siblings. So it might also be that your siblings are actually going through like upheavals and disruptions and changes, which like indirectly or directly, depending on how close you are with your siblings, also affect you. So there might also be like fluctuations in regards to all of that. And again, your short term, like distance travel, it's usually also our commutes we go to work. So that might be changing too. Maybe you get a new car. So your change of mobility is like getting disrupted, so to say. Or you have to change workplaces, so all of a sudden you go to like there's a whole new way basically where you have to go to your workplace. Or maybe, with Gemini, it's like you're placed on traveling further. Maybe you have to take the airplane. Not like every day, okay, please don't misunderstand me here. That would be a bit insane. But just maybe you have to go and fly and be at a new location for a few months, things like that. Third house also has a lot to do with like online presence. So there might be a change in your online presence. And since Uranus is expected, it could go both ways. That's the thing. Like either it could basically spark something in you where you're like, I want to take a social media break. I don't even want to be online anymore. Or it's like, I want to show up and I want to talk way more. I want to express myself more. I want to share my thoughts. So all of that, it could be really just changing how you are showing up online. Definitely definitely also breakthroughs in thinking patterns and mental processes and how you're communicating. Apparently, I cannot communicate. My words are not coming out as I would like them to. But just like Uranus can revolutionize the way that you express yourself here when it's traveling through a first house. And maybe you decide to start writing a blog or you start expressing brilliant ideas more with close friends and those around you in your immediate community. And so it's really about finding your unique voice amidst the noise, and especially while all these destabilizing technological changes will be taking place in as Uranus travels through Gemini through your first house. So this is what I have for you, Aries. Let me know down in the comments how this resonates. And yeah, what have you been feeling as of now? And we are gonna move on to Taurus Sun and Taurus risings. As you probably might have known and felt, Uranus has been traveling through your first house for a long while when it was in Taurus, and it's obviously going to go retrograde back into your first house, which is going to lead to you integrating changes to your identity, character, and your body. A lot of Taurus risings that I know have had some significant changes in their bodies. Lots of Taurus risings I know have like started to work out during that transit and like really change their bodies so they feel more well. And like the style might have also changed, like you probably felt a strong desire for freedom and the need to liberate yourself from what prevented you from fully expressing yourself and your identity. And just like this urge to embody, like really embody, like a more authentic version of yourself. And probably also have been having breakthroughs in your psychology and creating shifts in your personality and how you show up in the world. And perhaps you even started again, as I said, like a new workout routine or program, and like you really stacked up like your athleticism and been training your body and finding a sustainable way that you can take towards your future and your health and all of that. Um, it can even be something as simple as, changes to your aesthetics and clothing style, your appearance, and how you present yourself in the world, or complete change of direction in how you choose to steer the ship in your life, so to speak, because like the first house is also known as the helm. And it's really all about us. It's like our inner compass. And when Uranus is traveling through the first house, it's very much like our inner compass is shifting, like the needle is like going all over the place. And it's like, where am I going next? How do I really want to show up? Um, yeah, and a lot of Taurus risings I know really have been going through some like unexpected shifts, doing things that people were like, oh wow, I didn't know you could be that type of person. Even a lot of them being surprised by themselves in how they are showing up for themselves. So I'm really curious if that happened for y'all, Taurus risings. Um, it's challenging, right? Because it can be a very confusing time. All of a sudden we want to change our style, we want to change our hair, we want to change how we show up. Like this can be very destabilizing. And at the same time, by now, after this long period, I'm sure there's also like a comfort. Like there's almost like a comfort in the changing, that now it's almost going to be a bit sad or bittersweet that Uranus is moving out of your first house. Or I don't know, maybe some of you are all super excited for Uranus moving out of your first house. Um, Definitely also has a lot to do with like sense of independence, and maybe you've been a bit more rebellious in like, I want to be completely independent and only be able to rely on myself, which can be really powerful. And I hope for you it was. And at the same time, it can also foster a bit of the like lone scientist, lone mad scientist mentality, or like the lone wolf of like, oh, I'm just so different. Like nobody can, nobody can vibe with me. I don't know. So it can really go like both ways. And, Uranus moving back into Taurus one last final time is definitely refining those themes. And for the next 7 years, Uranus will be in your second house in Gemini. And, there's going to be fluctuations around income and resources and like how you show up in gain. The second house has a lot to do with like gaining, especially material gain. But with Gemini, it could also be intellectual gain. So you might go on a quest of like studying and taking in new information, taking online courses, wanting to upgrade your knowledge level. Maybe in a completely like new way you haven't thought about before. Maybe all of a sudden there's a new spark inside of you. You want to learn about AI and all these advanced technologies that you haven't had before. Um, and like this question of like, does this sustain me or is it draining my life force, making me feel bad, increasing my anxiety? Okay, definitely, especially Taurus risings, be wary of like how much you are on your tech devices, how much you're on social media, Um, and like, you might also be accumulating a lot of like technologies and all of that, and just like be wary of how much you are surrounding yourself with that. When Uranus is moving through Gemini, excuse me. Um, Again, it can always go both ways. I mean, with Gemini especially, right? So, tech is definitely probably going to be very supportive in your selfhood and becoming more independent and gaining knowledge in, unconventional ways you probably haven't thought of before. And then, you know, there's also like definitely a way where you will have to unplug and be in your body to feel more grounded. So just be aware how much you are consuming, okay? How much you are pulling in, because the second house, again, as we already mentioned before, has to do with gain, has to do with accumulation. So, don't land hopefully in the place where you are overwhelmed by the knowledge you have accumulated and you land in analysis paralysis rather than in the doing of it. Because Saturn and Neptune are also in your 12th house, so there's probably patterns that are being evoked, like subconscious patterns of like where are you not taking, or like where you should take back your power. And it's probably around themes like that, to be completely honest. Yes, there might also be like and you intellectual skills and talents that arise that you haven't even thought about before. And also like an unexpected discovery of your own resources where you're like, "Oh, actually, with this, with the knowledge that I have, I can make money off of it." And maybe you start offering new things to other people and making money in unconventional, unexpected ways. When Uranus is traveling through the second house, there's oftentimes unexpected gains or losses in our material resources. Exactly. And also, definitely experience breakthroughs around how you earn and think about like your personal finances. So yeah, you might start a side hustle for sure and pull towards like entrepreneurship. I've seen so much when Uranus is traveling to the second house, like the entrepreneurship is strong, okay? So just there's like this urge to independently, um, make money. Yes. This is what I have for you, dear Tauruses. Let me know down in the comments how this transit has been showing up in your life. I would be curious to hear that. Okay. Okay, we will go. Sorry, I was just a bit confused here for something. Um, we will go over to Gemini now. Gemini Sun and Gemini Risings. Uranus will be going retrograde back into Taurus in your 12th house. And then you're really the star of this because Uranus will be present in your first house for a while. But let's look at the themes that Uranus in Taurus has been bringing into your life and will bring one last time, which is integrating explorations of unconventional spiritual practices and powerful insights or ideas that came to you through the unconscious, through like dreams or like dream work, dream analysis. It might be someone who broke free, some of you probably broke free from like any kind of like self-undoing and destructive habits and patterns in your life that have been keeping you stuck. On the darker side, it might have also mean that, you've experienced a mental health breakdown. This certainly can happen with Uranus traveling through the 12th house. And at the same time, crises is always a turning point. So, and especially with Uranus, the line between breakdown and breakthrough is really a thin line. And I would not be surprised if many of you have been constantly like bouncing back and forth between these like breakdown and breakthrough lines, and had some unexpected, breakdowns and breakthroughs as well. Um, and you might have also, like isolated yourself from society, and perhaps you may have also been hospitalized. The 12th house has to do with ostracization, and like isolation and institutionalizing the things. So it might have happened that you have been dealing with like mental health battles and you had to go to the mental hospital or also the other hospitals, but it might have also been like a retreat. But I just want to mention both sides because like it's real, you know. I don't want to romanticize the 12th house because it can be tough, okay? 12th house can be tough. Um, yeah. So, if you made it out of this transit, going into the first house can mean a powerful revolution for your identity and how you show up in the world. Because I'm sure now you have a lot of tools you wouldn't have before that can help you with when Uranus is not traveling through your first house. And this retrograde period may be some final adjustments that you need to be making to your spiritual practices to help you best, to best help you support in going forward. Yes, and now, again, Uranus in Gemini will be traveling through your first house. So that's big, okay? There's going to be fluctuations and changes in how you are expressing yourself or what authentic self-expression means to you, how you want to express your identity and your character. And there might be completely different ways you want to do that. I mean, Gemini risings, you are already chameleons. It's almost hard to imagine that it could be even more chameleon-like, but that's like the only way that I'm seeing this kind of showing up. But I will say sometimes the unexpected things for Gemini risings can be that they settle for something different. Like maybe, it's you've already been the person that has been doing all the crazy hairstyles, and all of a sudden you're like, I actually want to grow out my natural hair. And that becomes the unexpected thing. So it really depends on your life and life circumstances, but like watch out for your energy levels, especially for like mental energy levels, because getting burned out when Uranus is traveling through your first house, especially when it is going to be right on your ascendant, and this will be different for all Gemini risings because your ascendant degree is not going to be at the same for everyone. So you really have to watch out for when this is going to happen. If you're a Gemini rising at 27 degrees, it's going to be a while until Uranus gets there. You still have a few years. But Uranus oftentimes can feel like this lightning bolt. At least that's what it felt like for me when Uranus was opposing my ascendant. Um, and this can be very like heavy, jittery energy, and you're already prone to mental clutter and overwhelm. So be very wary and really keep that journal, write things out, and have practices to ground yourself, like for sure, for real, because things could go sour very easily. Again, because there's like from a psychological perspective, this could really indicate like rapid progresses in your journey of individuation. But this can also be very overwhelming because, it feels like the lightning bolt strikes. And the thing is, for example, in yoga, when we do yoga, uh, when we are doing the asanas, the practices, when we're doing the meditation, what we are doing is we are stretching the mind and body that when this lightning bolt individuation moment come, that we can actually have the capacity to hold that because otherwise it gets overwhelming. So that's kind of what these practices, what these spiritual practices are for. And um, definitely something that could also show up in your life. So again, just be very, very in how you are, again, showing up for your spiritual practices and all of that. And yeah, also how much time you're on social media, probably. So, yourself may also become disruptive and poke at others, become the real jester, and, your sense of independence. And obviously, being in the first house, an angular house opposing your seventh house of relationships, you might end relationships because you feel a strong impetus for change within yourself, which ultimately affects your relationships to other people. Um, Yes, so perhaps the changes in you cannot uphold your existing relationships. And so, yeah, it's always like, are you, I mean, it all leads back to you. Everything that is in the first house is going to be kind of a mirror to the seventh house. So we just got to keep that in mind. But that's what I have for you, dear Geminis. Let me know how this transit has been going for you. And I wish you all the best of luck for real with Uranus going through our first house. So let me take a sip. Gosh, you guys, these horoscopes are always, um, it's a lot, you know. I'm like, gosh, I've talked so much and we're only at Cancer. And there's so much to say. So I'm rooting for myself here to make it through. Um, so Cancer Sun and Cancer risings. Uranus is going through your 12th house and is going to retrograde back into Taurus into your 11th house. So, what you will be doing or redoing is processing the changes relative to your groups, hopes, and dreams. Uranus, definitely could be integrating the breakup of long standing networks and groups of friends that you were involved with. And you probably made new friends and had new friend groups over the course that Uranus was in your seventh house. And you may have been exposed to like new and unconventional groups that are now integrated into your life. And this retrograde period may be about solidifying it and anchoring into these groups even more or refining them even further. And you may have also reinvented your goals and your dreams for the future and collaborated with new networks. Okay. The 11th house is, I like to call it the vitamin B house because it's like the benefits we get through other people and the people we associate with. So you might have gotten some unexpected benefits and gifts because of the new friend groups you started to associate yourself with. And you know this saying, the five people closest to you will show you your future. Well, that's kind of, I see the 11th house working that way because the 11th house has to do with like our hopes and dreams and wishes. And so naturally, when this gets disrupted and you are changing your hopes and dreams and wishes, and especially, with Uranus and Taurus, this has probably been something that you like dreams you have been having for a long time getting completely disrupted over the past few years. Naturally, you would probably want to have a different friend group if they don't resonate with your same values and dreams and wishes for the future anymore. So, oftentimes, this kind of goes hand in hand, and why I see both of these topics being so present in the 11th house. And again, the 11th house also speaks to community in general. So, like processing changes around new community and old community. Maybe you've left like a community, or a workspace, or just like some place that you've really anchored for yourself, and you're like, no, no more longer. So anything to do with your like social spaces, impacted by the 11th house, and also offers you the opportunity to elevate yourself through these networks. And this is really what this retrograde period is kind of going to go over with you for the final time. And then Uranus and Gemini is in your 12th house. And, there's going to be a revolution and disruption of your spiritual life. The 12th house has a lot to do with like our private life, the unseen things. The 12th house is in aversion to the ascendant. So that's why it's associated with our subconscious and things we like can't fully see clearly. But obviously, when there's a transit going through the 12th house, it kind of gets brought to the forefront and we do suddenly see it clearly, which can be overwhelming and at the same time also necessary. I don't want to downplay the crises moments that can happen when a planet is going through the 12th house. So I'm just going to say it straightforward as it is. The line between a mental breakdown and a breakthrough is very thin, especially with Uranus and Gemini, that is an air sign, that is a mercurial sign that has all to do with our thoughts and thinking processes. So be very aware, dear Cancers, in how much information you are taking into your life because you could easily get overstimulated and like mentally burn out to a level that is very, very unhealthy. And, that could lead you to having to seek mental help. And even mental asylum, because the 12th house also has to do with like isolation. and travel, like travel that is harsh, like things like banishment essentially. But in modern times, it could be something like, getting institutionalized, so being at the mental hospital, or also going to a retreat. We can look at it both sides. Okay. But I always like to mention the unpleasant things and also the pleasant things, just to keep it real with you guys, okay? Because I really don't like horoscopes that are one-sided. I really don't vibe with that. And so I want to mention both of these things. I want to, emphasize that the 12th house is a difficult house, and at the same time it can also have benefits. It could easily be that you're mentally overstimulated, and instead of, going to a mental asylum, you actually end up going on a retreat far away, remote, and you're like, I want to detoxify from social media. I want to be just by myself to get mental clarity. And that's actually like a good thing. That's a pleasant thing. Long term, of course, it will bring up processes that are uncomfortable because you're probably going to face your shadow self. Okay. A lot of times, 12th house transit make us face our shadow selves. So, yes, there's definitely also going to be a desire for freedom from like patterns of self-undoing, breaking, especially, mental patterns that have been toxic and not useful to you and keeping you small, um and just like leading you nowhere, like leading you into like analysis paralysis moments. Like we don't need that. We need to like get away from that. And definitely mental health breakthroughs. Okay, Uranus in the 12th is great for mental health breakthroughs, and highly recommend, do have therapists on your side for this time being. It's gonna be important. It can be all sorts of therapy. Okay, it can also be like body-based therapy, but just like people that you can rely on and can fall on if it does actually get too much here. It's crises moments are also moments of individuation through confrontation of unconscious materials. So like the breakthroughs in mental and psychic health, like, just, or maybe like keep a journal and take notes of any messages and insights that come to you via like synchronistic events. Um, yes, like don't be scared of the synchronistic events, okay? But find someone where you can process that in a good way. I highly recommend, Jungian therapy if that's what you're into. If you really want to go and process your dreams and like on an archetypal level, Jungian therapy, highly recommend. So yes, but, that's also the urge that you might be having, like to see unconventional therapists and do explore healing modalities that help you process your trauma in a different way that you haven't thought about before. um yes, so again, that's like what Uranus can do sometimes. It can bring us crisis moments, but at the same time it can also bring transformation through that. And that's what I have for you, dear Cancers. Let me know how this process has been going on for you, what you're looking forward to or not looking forward to. I'm sending you much, much love, and I'll see you soon. Okay, we're gonna talk to the Leo suns and risings. So Uranus is gonna retrograde back into Taurus in your 10th house, and that's gonna lead to integrating some final changes that come when it comes to your career and your public life, also your reputation. The 10th house also has a lot to do with like vocation, really what we want to do, not just for a living, but for our soul purpose. And 10th house also has to do with like authority figures or any titles. Again, it's like the public role we kind of play. And maybe you finally plucked up the courage to quit the job during Uranus's transit in your 7th house that didn't serve you, that led you to finding a much more aligned job that you want to do. Or you could have started a completely different career going from corporate to full-time artist, for example. Uranus is very independent. So you might have been on that self-entrepreneur path of like, I want to make it happen by my own. I want to build my own company. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happened to some of you Leo risings. And perhaps you've also had a visibility change in like your job title. So, basically, becoming the CEO unexpectedly. And this is what can happen, disruption, right? Maybe the boss leaves, or has to go in whatever way. All of a sudden, you become the CEO. What's gonna happen? You get pushed into like unexpected positions of authority. Um, Yes. Again, or you might have decided like I want to change my title. I don't want to be this representative. I want to, this is the way that I want to show up and this is the way that I want to be visible and this is how I want people to see me. Um, yes. And then, or perhaps you might have lost a job unexpectedly or you've changed jobs that, put you on a more unconventional path. The 10th house can also be a bit of soul searching, okay? And it might be that it proved to be more in line with your true desires for autonomy and independence in the career space. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. There's a few Leos that I know that were really like done with working for a boss and really wanted to start their own business, because like I want to be my own boss. Okay. So this is kind of what we're integrating with this final Uranus in Taurus chapter in your 10th house, dear Leos. And then now Uranus will be in Gemini in your 11th house, which will revolutionize the way you show up and choose your groups and networks. Um, so there's definitely going to be changes in all of that, meeting new alliances and peoples and benefactors. The 11th house has a lot to do with benefactors. I like to call it the vitamin B house because it's everything that we benefit from knowing the right people, and the things that they can bring into our lives. It's sometimes, it's the 11th house people that bring us the jobs and the opportunities that end up really, making it and expanding expanding us. And there's gonna be fluctuations and upheavals in your hopes, dreams, and goals. And maybe you will feel the impetus to redefine a dream, or you are inspired by a new vision or goal for your future. So much of this can be tied to technological changes, and changes that change the way like you communicate and kind of show up. And that's at least how I see it. It's like when we change these wishes and dreams, naturally we want to have a community around us that aligns with where we want to go. And so when our dreams and hopes get disrupted and we set these new goals for our lives, so often the people and communities, old communities, need to fall away because otherwise it wouldn't align with our life path and they would only be dragging us down, right? So this is often what I see happening when especially Uranus is kind of traveling through the 11th house. And there's also going to be like social opportunism connected to technology and innovation and how you show up. You might be helping in tech startups and things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens. And all of that and the way you yeah, I guess sorry, that's what I have to say. I tried to say something, but then I realized I was just gonna repeat myself. So never mind. But this is kind of what I have for you, Leo risings. Definitely a more exciting one, but again, Uranus is disruptive, so it's gonna change the way up you show. And again, it's gonna bring up unexpected resources as well, that other people bring into your life because you know them. So again, it's gonna be disruptive and it's also gonna be exciting. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts around all of this, dear Leos. Let me know, and I'm sending you much love. Okay, okay, okay. Let me just take a few breaths here. Gosh, I don't know how these people um that do horoscopes alone just sit here all the time. It's so hard, like after a while, uh, and you constantly feel like, gosh, if I just do one break, it's gonna, someone's gonna click off the video or something. So I try to be steady with my pacing, but it is hard. But here I have a little bit of room because I'm like, most people are gonna just click on the timestamps anyways. Like Virgos are not gonna listen to this, but I'm talking here. So if you're listening to this, you're cool because you're probably watching the whole video. So let me know, if you're here and you're actually watching, comment down below. Um, what should you comment down below? I'm Uranus, the Jester Master, or something like that. Because you're disruptive and you're cool. Um, yeah, so I guess this was just a mini break before I continue going on. Okay, Virgo suns and Virgo risings. Uranus will retrograde back into Taurus in your ninth house. That has to do or is going to kind of finalize the process of you processing the changes in your beliefs, your spirituality, and your higher education. Um, Something like an overquote that I like to use for the ninth house is worldviews shape worlds. And so your worldviews has probably undergone significant changes over the times that Uranus and Taurus has been transiting your ninth house over the past few years. You might have also had some disruptions in like long distance travel and maybe even moved places unexpectedly. You moved abroad or something like that. That very much can happen when Uranus is traveling in Taurus in your ninth house. You leave your homeland for a new land, starting a new life in a different culture, in a foreign culture. Or you might have had to move because of higher education purposes and doing studying abroad. Yeah, and also your spiritual life probably really shifted, like your beliefs, the way you follow your religious or spiritual beliefs, and maybe also therefore like the community you associate yourself with. Um, maybe you changed literally your religion, and then obviously you're going to have a completely different group of people you associate yourself with. Or maybe, you went on a pilgrimage that radically altered your religious learning, and now you're integrating it as part of like self-discovery journey. The ninth house is so much about like pilgrimages, which again, often we take this. A, a longer distance, right? Because the ninth house is long distance travel. A lot of people travel the globe or travel to specific places to take this specific pilgrimages, and they take time, right? A pilgrimage is not something you usually accomplish in just one day, so it's something that is really a process. um exactly. Or again, ninth house also has to do with studying and education. Can also be the school of life, which is maybe something that happened. Maybe you dropped out of school, or you changed what you want to study or what you want to learn. It's also like philosophical study that is now, beginning to bear fruit and opening new doors for you. So everything you kind of learned during that transit is going to be so beneficial and helpful to you now that is then going to go into Gemini, into your 10th house, because the changes that you made here are probably going to be very prominent in now how you're showing up in your career and your public life. So there's going to be like liberation in again in your career, in your vocation that you choose. Or maybe now you have the moment. Now you're like, I've been studying this thing. Now it's time for praxis, and you go to work and you realize, oh, actually, that is not really what I want to do. That's not the job that I want to have. That's not the work that I want to do in the world. It could also be clashes with authority figures that lead you to, blaze your own trail. A lot of times when Uranus is going through the 10th house, entrepreneurships get born because people are like, I don't want to work for a boss. I want to be my own boss. And, just like making it on your own, building your own company. I wouldn't be surprised that if it has to do with like technology, tech advancements, AI, things like everything that is like associated with Uranus. Like I'm not going to list all the topics right now, but you can go back to the beginning of the video where I'm talking about all the topics, okay? Because there's a lot of topics, but there's definitely like if there's technological advancements and all of that, I wouldn't be surprised if you choose maybe a tech startup, like you start your own tech startup or you start working at a tech startup. Um, yes, or something that has to do with like communication, thinking, our minds, something like that. There's millions of careers that I'm thinking of right now. and that you probably can think of. Maybe there's like an internal pull that is suddenly, like your inner compass leading you to a new direction. There could also be restlessness in your career and public life and feeling the desire to change. You could experience fluctuations, or perhaps like you change your job very often. That can also happen. Like you're unsatisfied, and so you constantly are changing jobs, hoping it will be better, but it's like an eternal process that is going on here, right? It's an angular house. The 10th house is the angular house to your first house. And especially for Virgo risings, okay, the thing with Virgo risings is that your ascendant ruler is Mercury. And the other house that is ruled by Mercury is Gemini. It's your 10th house. And a lot of Virgo risings have a hard time, that's why, to distinguish themselves from their career and their work. And that's probably what Uranus is very much triggering, because it's also going to square your ascendant at some point, and you're going to have to really think about, am I my work? Am I identifying too much with my work and my public role outside? And can I also be like not the person that is constantly like, can I go, like switch back from my public role? Um, yes. What else do I have? Again, could also be like that a new boss shows up at your work and you receive an unexpected promotion, fulfilling a new role that carries more responsibility, or alternatively, you could experience a fall from grace, so to speak, and let and let be go or fired. That can also happen. It's like just unexpected shift, like you wouldn't think, or maybe your boss doesn't work there anymore, and all of a sudden you get pushed into to the position of like being the CEO or being the boss, and it's all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, now I have to run this. So, yeah. Again, it's an angular house, so the effects can be a bit louder than the other houses. And this is what I have for you, dear Virgos. Let me know how this transit has been going for you, and I'm sending you much love. Okie dokie. We are gonna talk about Libra suns and Libra risings. Uranus will retrograde back into Taurus in your eighth house, which will gonna lead to you integrating changes to shared resources, intimate bonds, and inheritances. Definitely, reflecting on losses and gains you have been going through over the years that Uranus has been in Taurus in your eighth house, and readjusting to life with more or less, you know, uh, thing. The eighth house has a lot to do with like other people's resources and like what other people bring into our life. That's why the eighth house often has to do with anxiety, because it's everything that is outside of our control, because other people are outside of our control, and what they do or bring into our life is outside of our control. And especially, these people that we have our entanglements with, so like our marriage partners, or just our life partners, or our family, or just close people. Could also be work colleagues, just everyone that you have this close entangled bond with, that can even be contractual, so to say. When something happens and shifts, that usually seems outside of our control. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you have been dealing with like financial instability or like material instability that has to do with other people. Maybe your partner, maybe your spouse has been going through material instability that obviously then directly impacted you, since you are the person that is connected to your spouse and to your partner. Conversely, you might also be start to enjoy the fruits of, joint financial assets with a partner, or a long-term investment or inheritance, because the Uranus, especially in the eighth house, can also be unexpected gains as well. It doesn't just have to be losses; it can also be gains. You like, like an unexpected inheritance that comes in, not even just from you, but maybe from your partner, and like all of a sudden there's more riches and more gain than you knew, or you get like long-term investments suddenly start to pay off. And that can also happen with Uranus in the eighth house. So, the realizations about like loss and death, decay, definitely gives you a deeper appreciation for life. Or like has done that over the past few years. And so this is going to be, that transit, like integrating experiences around power dynamics relative to shared resources. Definitely a power play house, okay? So yes. And then Uranus will be moving or already has moved. We've already experienced that for a few months now, what Uranus and Gemini means, but we've just dipped our toes inside by now. And Uranus and Gemini in your ninth house is going to bring radical changes in your worldview, your spirituality, and your religious practices. Maybe you have multiple practices. A lot of times when Uranus moves into the ninth house, people really change the way that they look at the world. And this can lead to a lot of like internal disruption because the way you view the world is really how you show up for the world, like the way you believe things function. Maybe you have like a spiritual belief of like this is how God shows up and like this is it. But then all of a sudden, Uranus chimes in your ninth house and all of this gets disrupted. And you're like, but wait, like that's not what I want to believe in anymore. Or like you don't get the full evidence of that. So that can be very tricky and it can really be destabilizing. Especially when you are saying goodbye to a specific like religious or spiritual practice that you've been holding on for a long, long, long time. So again, stay grounded, okay? I could definitely see there could also be some mental, breakthroughs, but also disruptions and breakdowns that are happening over this. Ninth house can be unexpectedly existential with Uranus there, to be completely honest, because, if all of a sudden your whole worldview is flipped upside down, this can make you very existential about like, what is the purpose of everything, So. I just want to put that out there, okay? Um, but it could also be very motivating, maybe all of a sudden you're like, oh, actually, that's the spirituality I want to follow, and that's great for me. With Uranus and like the rise of AI, I'm just like spontaneously thinking of the Church of AI. Anyhow, that's just a small joke here, but yeah, you might find a lot of solace in, like technologies and the way they are impacting your life in a positive way. Um, so, I like fluctuations just around that and how that is integrated and shown up in your day-to-day life. Or there could be fluctuations around your or like opportunities for like long distance travel and perhaps related to like new tech around travel. Maybe you want to start working at an aviation company. You want to fly more. You want to all the miles you have accumulated over the years, you're like, now I'm gonna book that long-term flight, first class. I don't know. That's just what I can see. But do be careful, okay? Depending on, if what planets you have in the ninth house. I would be careful in some instances in traveling far away because it could actually sometimes be more disruptive than you would like. And you might get some unexpected surprises. But there could be a real urge to explore different beliefs, different cultures. Maybe you change your spiritual beliefs and you're like, I want to go and travel to that culture where I can follow that. I'm just thinking of like Bali as an example. Maybe you want to go to Bali to take that and go to that retreat. But it actually gets disrupted, and you're like, that I'm not sure if that's really what I want to do. So yeah, definitely disruptive times for your mental health. I wouldn't underestimate that. Maybe you want to move abroad. Maybe you want to move to a completely different country. Maybe you have to move to a different country for, because the ninth house also has to do with like higher education. So maybe you have to go and study abroad. So you have to move to a new country for a certain amount of time. That's definitely something that can happen with Uranus in the ninth house. And or you might really rethink what is it that I want to study and learn and find new unconventional paths and how you can do that. Maybe you want to opt for online studying. Very realistic with Uranus, especially in Gemini, moving through that ninth house. So, yes, all of these things probably very present. Or again, you might want to get educated in like technology, like you want to learn and take up a path where you want to take a course where you learn about like technology, specifically like AI. Um, just all of these things. Again, there's so many topics that I've listed at the beginning of this presentation, so you might want to go back and listen to that, just because otherwise it's going to take a bit too much time. But just think of like all these studies and fields that have to do with like innovation tech, maybe also like mental health spaces, or spaces and careers, education that has to do with also like, teaching, teachers, all of that, the school system, all things that could be your new path in what you want to study. And ninth house is also a lot of life study. You might it's like a very good time to keep a journal and journal down and jot down your thoughts. So yes, this is what I have for you, dear Libras. Let me know how this has been going for you. And I'm sending you much love. Okay, Scorpio suns and Scorpio risings. Taurus will be retrograding back into your seventh house, which will lead you to integrating changes to relationships and partnerships, just like all the dynamics that you've had between like close one-on-one relationships that usually have to do with partnerships, but partnerships can be so vast, sometimes the intimate relationship in the seventh house can also talk about the relationship with your therapist, just somebody that knows more to you than the average Joe, so to say. Um, and perhaps you started an important relationship during the time period that Uranus was in your seventh house, or you ended a relationships that when Uranus was traveling through your seventh house. Uranian partnerships can be destabilizing, but are also unconventional, creative, and fun. And definitely, now reflecting and integrating relationships that have pushed you or pushed the boundaries and were liberating in some way, or relationships that helps you establish more independence on psychological wholeness. It can really go both ways. Sometimes when Uranus is traveling through the seventh house, especially on the ascendant, it's actually people that can come into our lives that embody that Uranian archetype, and they can be the ones that disrupt our lives. Or destabilize the way that we've been thinking. Look, like I'm just thinking of the manic pixie dream girl archetype, it can be genderless, okay, in this case, but just like the person that kind of shows up and like really disrupts the way that you um, just want to show up and have relationships. And, maybe an unstable relationship could have created disruption, but now you are beginning to reflect on and integrate the experiences. And maybe you've discovered some enemies in a shocking and unexpected way, because the seventh house also talks about open enemies that also cause you to choose to terminate some relationships or contractual agreements. From personal experience, I can just share that once Uranus moved into my seventh house, it completely changed the way that I want to have relationships. It began first of all with me meeting someone in the most unconventional way ever, falling for somebody that I never thought I would fall for, because it's not somebody that I was initially attracted to, wasn't my type or anything. And this person then led me to like flip my whole life upside down and really like question, why do I even want a relationship in the first place? Like, what do I want and need? How do I want to show up in relationships? Um, and then, especially when Uranus was opposing my sun and ascendant, that's actually when another person came into my life. And at that time, I was really that was like when we had that Venus retrograde, summer in Leo 2023. And I was reading that in a book that this can happen. So it was like Venus was squaring my sun and ascendant, and Uranus was opposing my sun and ascendant. I had that T square going on. And I was like, really, for the first time in my life, I was all of a sudden, I was really open to like having open relationships and exploring like themes of polyamory, which is not something that is usually present in my life, but it really was around that time. So that's maybe something that you also might be revisiting if that's a theme that has showed up. But I know a lot of Scorpio risings that have also, entered into unconventional relationships. Doesn't have to be polyamorous, okay? I know a lot of Scorpios that, ended relationships, long-term relationships, and ended up in a new long-term relationships, but that is just like much better and healthier. Still disruptive again. So you might be reflecting back on that when Uranus is now going back into your seventh house. And now Uranus in Gemini will be going through your eighth house. So there will be disruptions around shared resources, intimate bonds, inheritances, taxes, debts. I think when it comes to shared resources, there are power dynamics involved. So, changes and fluctuations in power dynamics are amplified when Uranus is there because the eighth house has to do with like resources of other people. And that can sometimes be a bit anxiety inducing, and that's why the eighth house also has to do with anxiety. It's because it's everything that is outside of our control. And that's obviously unpleasant, and that can lend to a lot of anxiety. So, especially when things around like inheritance or taxes change, it can also be unexpected financial gain from a partner or from a spouse or from a person that you are entangled with. The eighth house has a lot to do with our entanglements and the people we are entangled with. Can be the spouse, but it can also be all sorts of other people, like work relationships, or family members, all of that, just people we have that like kind of contractual bond with, almost you could say. The eighth house also has to do with contracts. So be also wary, with signing any new contracts, like look over the fine print. If somebody's offering you like some unexpected windfall, like don't, don't like just check, triple check of like, is this serious or not, type of thing. Yeah, because not all that glitters is gold. At the same time, you might be starting to like invest in places that might benefit you later on down the road. Um, exactly, like, surprise inheritances or new innovative ways of investing money for the long term are explored and implemented. Gosh, I literally said the same thing I put in the notes. Again, or you could enter into new financial partnerships, or your spouse or partner could experience fluctuations in their resources, which obviously, impact you because you are also part of this equation. And again, that's what makes the eighth house kind of anxiety inducing. Again, because it's things that are outside of our control. And you may experience an awakening around your perception of death, of loss, and develop a deeper understanding of these topics, especially in this dark house. The eighth house is an aversion to the ascendant. So it also has, it's not like specifically like the 12th house that it has to do with our subconscious, but anxiety for me is also something that is not rooted in the present moment. It's fears around the future, and things we cannot again control ourselves. So that's why things like that come up. Death as well, it's something we cannot control. So, excuse me. I think this can bring a lot of that into the conscious, because that is like the awakening quality. And there might be like, new ways that you learn to liberate yourself from your fears and anxieties. Like the idea, when we acknowledge our fears and anxieties, they become less overwhelming. And Uranus can bring in that electric energy that shocks or awakens us to repressed fears and anxieties found in the eighth house, and can really help us examine how these fears can hold us back. And I'm sure, Jupiter already traveling there last year and a bit of this year has already kind of prepped us for, sorry, I say us just because I'm a Scorpio rising as well. And I find truth in that. To really explore that on a deeper level, and maybe also find new unconventional paths and ways in like therapeutic settings, and healing modalities, maybe through technology and tech, like new innovative tech solutions, and how you can deal again with like fears and anxieties, things that are outside of your control. You might be surprised new ways that you find yourself in, exactly, or like new therapists, and all of that. That's what I have for you, dear Scorpios. Let me know. I'm curious to hear from y'all, and I'm sending you much love. Okay, let me take a sip of tea. Gosh, sorry, there's like a fly here, and I hope to God that it's not, you can't hear it, but it is annoying because it's flying, flying around me. I'm getting disrupted. The fly is the embodiment of Uranus, and I'm getting disrupted. Um, oops, earplugs flying out. We don't want that. Okay. Sagittarius suns and Sagittarius risings. Uranus is going to retrograde back into Taurus in your sixth house, leading you to integrate changes and disruptions to your physical health, obligations, and your work service you kind of have to the world. Um, so, the sixth house is also a house of like caretaking. So perhaps you have to take on additional responsibility or obligation to care for someone. This is the place where Mars has its joy. So it's about action and often can strain you as well, So you may have been met with circumstances where you felt burnout, especially with that electric energy of Uranus. You may have also adjusted changes to your daily routines significantly. Perhaps you've been impacted by health challenges, which motivated you to take on less work and actually slow down. Because with Uranus and Taurus, the radical thing is to actually slow down and connect back to nature. I'm not surprised if that's kind of the path that you have been on, like reconnecting back to nature and deciding to live a more off-grid life that actually benefits your health and kind of gets you away from this like hustle culture and all of that for these like past 2 years that Uranus has been in the sign of Taurus. And perhaps you've had a change of job and, maybe going from something that is very time consuming to something more suited to you, to your own rhythms. And, maybe you realize that, you have limited energy. You can't do it all at once, or that like you don't value a particular work style anymore. And that inspired some change. Maybe you've also had a burnout that like forced you to slow down, or like some unexpected health challenges that kind of showed up that also again forced you to slow down. Or yes, again, it doesn't always have to be you. Maybe something happens at work, or as I said in the beginning, somebody else needs help, and you get put into that caretaking role, which inadvertently, of course, affects you. The sixth house is a house that is in aversion to the ascendant. So it is often these unseen struggles, these things we kind of have to do, the daily metaphorical dishes we have to wash, which oftentimes is what health routines and day-to-day life obligations can feel like. It's just like we have to do this. We have to like suck it up and just get it done with, because we know that in the long-term process, it will benefit us. Or sometimes we may not even be able to see it. I also like to call this the sixth house, the Sisyphus house, because it feels like pushing up that boulder all the time without really knowing why the heck am I doing this. So you might have really landed in positions, and now you're reflecting back one last time and integrating these, challenges that might have come up into your life that just felt like pushing up that boulder again and again. And now Uranus will be going to your seventh house, which is very interesting because there's going to be sudden changes and disruptions to, your love partnerships, to your business partnerships. People you are attracted to, you might start to get attracted to very unconventional people. Existing relationships can be destabilizing in some kind of way, or if existing relationships are already on a shaky ground, Uranus can disrupt your relationships for better or for worse. Again, this is an angular house, so transits here can often be louder than in other houses. For example, that electric and brilliant energy of Uranus can bring in some really creative and exciting energy in that seventh house. And sometimes, especially when Uranus is close to your descendant, it can be, people like Uranian people that are brought into your life, and like they disrupt your life, and they force you to change. It's like that manic pixie dream girl archetype that, like that person that you meet that flips your life upside down and your relationship view upside down. All of a sudden, you have completely different values and what you actually want in a relationship. This is what happens when Uranus is going through a seventh house. You might be open to new ways to have relationships. Sometimes Uranus going through the seventh can lead to people exploring polyamory, open relationships, unconventional forms of being together with people and having partnerships, and help reform that way we think about relate and what they are even useful for. Um, yes, and you know, I I just want to say that if you have existing relationship, this doesn't mean that there's going to be a breakup. There certainly can be, okay? It's something that is often indicative. Like if there's a transit that leads to a breakup is like Uranus, especially if there's a long-term relationship and Uranus goes and brings in that shaky ground. It's like a test of really like wanting to go deeper or not. And so Uranus can definitely like shake things up to the point where even like long-term couples can all of a sudden question like, do they want this relationship or not? Obviously, it doesn't have to lead to a breakup at all. Like, I don't want to scare y'all that are in relationships. It can also just be that both of you find new conventional ways in being in that existing relationship that actually fits your needs much better. Or you start exploring in different unique ways on your own. Again, it's that time where existing couples do try something like open relationships. So again, I just want to bringing all sides into this, because I don't like this black and white type of horoscopes. There is always so much that can be said. Um, yes, freedom in relationship becomes an important need. Also because this is an angular place, the first house will also be impacted. So the other, acts as a mirror for the process of psychological growth and individuation. The freedom you desire in relationship will be felt by your partner. Again, it could also be your partner that all of a sudden gets very Uranian flavored and coded, and they're actually the one initiating the changes and the disruptions. Exactly, like in their own life, and then of course it impacts you because the seventh house is a mirror to the first house. So it's good to remember that the self-other polarity is at play here. So, contractual agreements may also shift or fluctuate and perhaps connected to technological changes. Um, Gosh, sorry, I'm just like off the bat thinking of like there are some Sagittarius risings that are going to start relationships with AI. I wouldn't be surprised. It's a hot topic, and like I'm debating here if it's good that I just said that, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are Sagittarius that are open to explore, AI girlfriends, boyfriends, robo girlfriends, boyfriends, you know, whatever you want. Like, I don't judge. We listen and we don't judge. Um, so yeah, so that's just what I want to say here. It looks like fun, dear Sagittarius. You also have, Saturn and Neptune in Aries going through your fifth house, so there is definitely big changes when it comes to your like romantic relational life, up in the air and the fire for you. Yes, over the next few years, right? Because it's going to be very loaded for at least the next 2.5 years here. Um, yes, so that's just what I have to say here. Definitely a very interesting time for Sagittarius risings, I must say that. So, yeah, this is what I have for y'all, Sagittariuses. Let me know how you've been feeling, and I'm sending you much love. Capricorn suns and Capricorn risings. So Uranus and Taurus will be retrograding back into your fifth house. So you're gonna be integrating changes to your creativity, children, and romance. And the fifth house for me is a lot about the joys we have in life, the joie de vivre, everything that makes life worth living. And when Uranus comes in and chimes in, all of that gets flipped, turned upside down. And, Uranus retrograde in the fifth house, maybe you've been integrating changes to your like creative life, and you may have begun to really like have a fruitful period of creative work as an artist that open up new doors for you, or just like the way that you have your creative expression, or maybe you find new outlets of creative expression, a new joy in sculpting, in painting, in playing an instrument, in engaging in poetry, or just the artworks that you enjoy in your life. Or the way you decorate your house, because that is also self-expression, a creative self-expression. And if you have kids, if you have children, this may have brought some disruptions and changes to the lives of your kids. Um, it can also impact them. It might have also been a time where you had actually um, given birth, or if you are the partner, just become a parent. Let's just put it that way. Let's not overcomplicate it here. And obviously that also led to a disruptive change in your life, and how you show up, and the kids, they are a disruptive force. They are a lovely force, but they are also disruptive to our day-to-day lives. Can also channel a lot of things in ourselves. I'm not a parent, so like I don't want to speak from personal experience, but just a lot of things that I've heard. And my mom has been working with kids since forever, so and she studied all of that. She studied oh my gosh, I cannot say that word in English. Pedagogy. That's not how you say it. I'm so sorry, guys. English is not my first language. Um, but anyhow, so just like kids, like having kids in our lives, they can also really force us to reconnect with our own inner child. And this is also what Uranus can sometimes bring. And maybe you're like, okay, um, how is the creative self-expression of my kid kind of triggering my own self-expression that I had or maybe did not have when I was a kid? Um, so, all of that can definitely happen when Uranus is there. And that's kind of what you're integrating. Maybe a lot of you have been doing some like inner child work. And the thing is, a lot of inner child work has so much to do with creative self-expression. And the way we tap back into that is like we go back to like the hobbies we had as children. Maybe acting was a hobby, maybe playing a certain instrument was a hobby, maybe painting was a hobby. And so just like revoking that and like healing your inner child can so often be done through like taking back up these hobbies and finding the small joys in life. And so with Uranus here, there can be some kind of luck or good fortune that is also activated, because the fifth house is the joy of Venus. And depending on placement, the fifth house is also related to like sex and romance and pleasure and all of that. So there might have also been interesting encounters in your romantic or dating life. Maybe you open up your dating life and you've been dating and getting to know, dancing, romancing with like unconventional people. That's certainly something that can also happen when Uranus is going through the fifth house, and that's what you've been integrating. Or are going to integrate one final last time. And now Uranus in Gemini is in your sixth house and will be going through your sixth house for the next couple of years. And the sixth house has to do with our, it's going to basically disrupt our physical health, our obligations, our work and service, and our day-to-day life. The sixth house is very much the house of doing daily dishes. It's sometimes a bit annoying, but this can really be disruptive. I know a lot of your Capricorns, you'll like your routine. But Uranus is gonna shake up your routines, okay? Don't be mad at me. Be mad at Uranus, okay? I'm just saying as it is. So you could experience a sudden or unexpected like health challenge. Sometimes health scares can show up when Uranus moves into the sixth house. Because Uranus has this like destabilizing quality that can like break up structures. And if there is a health scare or there is a health challenge that is coming up in your life, obviously it's gonna completely like throw your routines upside down. Maybe you also experience some sort of mental fatigue and mental burnout. Okay, this is going to be a significant time for you to take care of your mental health because Gemini is an air sign, a mercurial sign that has a lot to do with our mind. So be very wary of your social media consumption and information consumption because you could easily get mentally overstimulated, and then lead to like some dire burnout. And yeah, that's definitely going to impact your daily routines, health routines, and maybe force you into just adapting to completely new structures. So yeah, there's definitely going to be adjustment in how you show up to that. And also, maybe new innovative creative solutions in how you want to show up you for yourself, in what way you want to show up for yourself. The nervous system definitely comes to mind with Gemini here. because like if we think of medical astrology, and this is like the only house that I'm going to talk about this because the sixth house has to do with our health, but Gemini rules over like our hands, rules over our lungs. So do be wary of these body parts, okay? And just like speech, all of that could potentially be impacted in ways. Again, just be extra careful of your mental health. Maybe a good time to start working with a mental health practitioner, just because at the end it's connected. Okay, your mental health is connected to your physical health, and the way we think about things, excuse me, is obviously going to have an impact on our physical health. So yeah, there could be disruptions to also employers, to workers, to your immediate sphere, and perhaps related to technology as well. Maybe you work at a company, you have a job, and it's like you get replaced by AI. So what now? That's kind of the changes, the mean changes Uranus can bring into our lives. And also, but it's like, okay, what now, But maybe you also find a new job that is in a field of technology and development of AI. So it's, like make a friend of the enemy, I guess. But it's definitely going to lead you to, switch the way that you also want to do work, and work for yourself. It's definitely an entrepreneurial time as well. If you do want to do that and maybe build your own companies, things like that, online especially, that could also be a very good time to do that. So that's what I have for you, dear Capricorns. And let me know how you've been doing. And I'm sending you love. Receive it, Capricorn. Receive the love. You're not getting enough of it. You're not letting yourself receive enough of it. Okay, let's take a sippy sip. Okay, Aquarius suns and Aquarius risings. Uranus and Taurus will be traveling back to your fourth house, which will lead to you integrating changes and disruptions in your home and family life. The fourth house is an angular house, so it's definitely a much more impactful house. And or perhaps you had to leave, your home unexpectedly during the Uranus in Taurus transit, or someone from your family had to leave the home unexpectedly. There may have been disruptions within the family, perhaps with the parent, or the father, since, the fourth house can specifically relate to the father. And disruptions can be pleasant or unpleasant. Could be an unexpected death that also occurred, because the fourth house actually a lot of times has to do with like passing away, because it's a private space, and with loss. um and it can also be an addition to the family, okay, like somebody new gets born into the family, or your parents find, like they break up, could also be a disruption. They find a new life partner, that's also a disruption to the family. Yes, so this is a dark house. It is also called the subterranean place, so it is related to our past, to the mystical, and to our foundations and our ancestry. It's a very foundational house, and it's really like the roots, like the the roots of the whole tree. It's really the base, and when the base gets disrupted, that can be unpleasant, especially when it's in fixed signs, because again, Uranus is related to liberation, freedom. So I do feel like this transit could have really shaken up ancestral family patterns that needed to be healed and released. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna be the person that changes the family patterns. Yes, things like that showed up, and now we're having the final integration of that. And for the future, and well, also still as of right now, Uranus, we got our first few moments of Uranus in Gemini, but it's going to be much more present starting next year. And the next couple of years, Uranus will be in Gemini in your fifth house. So this is going to be a surge in creative expression and project. So Uranus coming in here is going to bring in a strong energy of freedom and progress, and especially how you want to show up creatively. Brilliant creative ideas can come to you, newfound hobbies and indulgences. Perhaps you're inspired by the spark and impulse of Uranus to start a creative project that brings you great joy and pleasure. And just like taking up new hobbies, and there might, with Uranus and Gemini, there might be this thing of like wanting to try out new tech. Maybe the new hobby has a lot to do with like AI and tech and all of that. I don't know, building robots. I don't know, just like something that comes to my mind. There's like the intellectual joie de vivre. I often like to call the fifth house the joie de vivre because it's just so much about the joy we have in life, like the little things that make life worth living. And Uranus sometimes lets us find these things in very unexpected, unconventional ways. So you might be surprised, just trying out a new hobby, how much more happier it can make you in your life. But it's definitely probably going to be something that needs to be intellectually stimulating. So, maybe chess. Maybe you start playing online chess. I don't know. That's just like the first thing that is coming up in my mind. Yes, the fifth house also has to do with like dating, romance, all of that. You might be dating unconventional partners, or you're just very open to experiencing romance in new ways. All of that is in the fifth house. The fifth house also has to do with children's. That's why I actually, that's why I put pregnancy with the exclamation mark on here, because you might want to have unconventional romantic adventures, but use protection. That's all I'm saying. Unless you want kids, then of course, don't use protection, because the fifth house can lead to unexpected pregnancy. So that's why I'm just like, be careful here. If you do have kids, sometimes they can embody the Uranian energy and they might be really disrupting your day-to-day life. Maybe they're in a phase and they like become a small, Promethean awakeners, disruptors, provokers. They're really provoking you all of a sudden, and all of that. So yeah, just be wary of that. Um, yeah, and it can also, it doesn't also, maybe you don't have kids, maybe you don't plan on having kids. The kids in the fifth house can also talk about our own inner child. And oftentimes when Uranus is going through the fifth house, we might find new ways in how to get into contact with our own inner child and find healing modalities in, because like a lot of the healing, the inner child part comes from healing that expression that was maybe shut down. Exactly. So you might find new ways to express yourself with words that really heal you and heal that inner child of you that maybe did not get the chance to express itself the way it wanted to. So this is, yeah, an exciting time. The fifth house is in trine to the ascendant, so it's gonna be an interesting time for your Aquarius rising with Uranus here in that fifth house. And that's what I have for you. So let me know how you've been doing, and I'm sending you mucho luvo. Okay. Dear Pisces, suns and risings, Uranus will be retrograding back into your third house. So you will be integrating changes from the nearby environment, thinking and communicating. So the third house is really our fish tank. It's everything that is kind of outside of the fourth house. Like the fourth house is that stable house, but the third house is everything around it. That's why it has to do with our neighbors. And there's probably a lot of things that happen in your neighborhood. Maybe you change neighborhoods. Maybe you also moved away. And all of that, which can be continued in the fourth house, but like, switching neighborhoods, maybe your neighbors change and they have been really disruptive, bringing up some challenging, things, all of that. You probably also really changed your daily commutes, because a third house is a slow distance. Sorry, not slow distance, short distance travel. That's what I meant. So it probably changed the way that you like commute, and you know, basically, wait, sorry, my notes here got a bit fuzzy. That's why I'm saying things wrong. Let me just grab a second to not, to not give you, uh, yes. Okay, yeah, because okay. let's do this again. So, Uranus going back into Taurus in your first house is probably revolutionized your mind and the way you communicate and your local environment. So maybe you had like breakthroughs in your mental processes and now are able to overcome stagnant patterns that have, really blocked your thinking over the past several years. And, you know, especially with Taurus, like deep ingrained beliefs and all of that. The third house also has to do with siblings. Maybe your siblings served as a very destabilizing force in your life. So, there could have been disruptions when it comes to that. Maybe like a sibling moving closer to you or moving away from you, or just changing the way that you have your relationship with them. And, the probably also sparked a lot of like local trips. Maybe you found new ways to show up in your local environment, joining local causes, courses, places, new coffee spots, or just like wanting to help out the community in different ways. So Uranus definitely revolutionized the way you express yourself and communicate. And so, that's what you have here. And now Uranus is doing that one last final time, integrating yes, that these changes. And, now Uranus in Gemini is kind of moving into your fourth house in Gemini. So there's new ways of connecting to family and to ancestors. Okay, it's also disrupting the way that you know you are in contact with your family. The fourth house is an angular house, so it is a more prominent house. Um, so maybe, maybe you have to leave home unexpectedly, or someone from the family has to leave home unexpectedly. Maybe you want to change where you live because your living situation isn't coherent anymore or doesn't serve the way you want to live anymore. Um, or just maybe you want to live in a completely unconventional way, like off the grid, or like new technological advancements. You want to live in a more tech-equipped house, in a more futuristic type of home and house that is equipped with all the new advancements that we have with technology. I would not be surprised when it comes to that. Um, Fourth house is also our foundation, it's our roots. So there's foundational shakeups that happen in our private life in the fourth house. Um, and yeah, it's really no joke, okay? It's also a house where I'm like, be careful, Pisces, of like, mental breakdowns and all of that. Especially, when these foundations get shaky, it can get really existential, okay? And so I just want you to be wary and also have lots of grounding practices. Because I know you, dear Pisces, can already be grounded. Um, Sorry, can already be ungrounded. So yeah, let me just take a sip. Sorry, dear Pisces, my voice is just letting down. I've been doing this for so long now. And I feel my lungs are getting, sorry, my throat is getting raspy and I'm losing my momentum with words. So I'm extremely sorry. I hope one day to make horoscopes where you come first and not last. So you don't get the last of me, when I have already been mentally drained. Um, yes. So, um, the fourth house is a dark house. It's also called the subterranean place. So it relates to our past and to like the mystical, the unseen, the very like private spaces that we have. And the home is literally the most private space we can have. Um, and oftentimes when Uranus chimes into the fourth house, we like are really faced with also like our ancestry and where we come from. Maybe you want to go back to the roots of where you've come from. Maybe you grew up in a country that is not your home country or not your home nationality, and all of a sudden you're like, I want to go down that rabbit hole and find out where I'm from. Um, Maybe you want to learn the language of your ancestors, right? Like if there's transgenerational things that have been going on. I watched a documentary today about adoptees, and And that's just something that's like literally coming to my mind right now. And goddamn, it would be crazy if an adoptee is watching this right now, and is a Pisces rising, because that's definitely something I could be seeing for you. I know this is a very specific example, but it's just what's coming to my mind right now. Um, Specifically, the documentation was about Korea because sadly there was a lot of adoptions, and a lot of like, adoptions that shouldn't have been adoptions there. But that's a topic in and of itself. And so, a lot of Koreans that grew up in completely different countries and, finding their wa way back to maybe their families, their long lost families, and also, like the culture and the language. It's very weird, growing up somewhere different, and then you actually go back to the culture and the land that you're from, but you still feel like a foreigner because you're not equipped with etiquette and the rules and all of that. Like some part of your soul feels like, yes, I belonged here, but that's not the way that I grew up with, so I'm still a foreigner in that place. And it can make you really question, where do I belong? Where do I fit in? Um, yes, so I'm sorry, yeah, that's just like a very specific example. Um, but it can happen with everyone, or just maybe you just get super curious about your ancestry and you dig up the informations, you start doing a family tree, and maybe there's like, toxic thinking patterns, because, Gemini has a lot to do with like thinking in mind. And you're like, I want to change that. I want to change the patterns, the thinking patterns in my family that maybe have to do with scarcity or shame or grief or anger. Um, and yeah, and you do it through journaling. Like journaling can be such a catalyst, to like change your patterns and like work with affirmations and all of that. It might be something, dear Pisces rising, that comes up in your life. So I really hope I gave you justice there, by the end, and I truly apologize, that I'm a bit tired after all the horoscopes. Yes, but this is what I have for you, Pisces. Let me know how you've been doing, and I'm sending you so much love. More love than all the other rising signs, okay? Because you deserve it. Okay, okay, okay. So, dear guys, we are at the end of this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. This is how you can stay connected. Okay, I mentioned this at the beginning. Maybe some of you heard it, maybe some of you didn't. Um, I was supposed to record this with Tiziana today, but sadly, due to personal reasons, it wasn't possible. We actually should have recorded it last week, but then I had unexpected health issues coming up right when Uranus was about to station retrograde. So we couldn't film the Uranus episode because an Iranian disruption happened. Um, but yes, I just want to shout out to Tiziana, Liminal Spaces Astrology, Liminal Warrior Instagram, okay? Amazing astrologer, and she helped write a lot of the horoscopes. So I just really want to thank her and shout her out because this wouldn't have been so thorough without her efforts. And the way you can stay connected to me on Instagram under Resonance Astrology. Sometimes, more or less, I'm also active on Reddit under Haruka. And, you can also find me on my website, resonanceastrology.com, and, subscribe to this channel, Resonance Astrology. Weekly overviews every week, and lots of horoscopes up for the future, hopefully. And also Spotify, all the podcasty type episodes are also always on Spotify, like the podcast series. I have a podcast series called, The Planets Meet the Planets, that is currently running, and we're gonna release the Mercury episode next week. And there's also a whole house series I did, okay? And that's always something I can recommend, because maybe you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I would like to know more about the ninth house, or I would like to know more about the 10th house or the seventh or any other house. Well, there's a whole playlist where you can listen to the houses and learn about them in much more depth. And I'll link that in the description down below. Um, so you can learn more and get educated more, because that's what Uranus and Gemini is all about. So thank you for sticking around. Please leave a like. This was so much effort to do, and if it can reach the people, I would be so happy. I would seriously be so happy if the efforts are paid forward. And yes, So I'm gonna say bye now because I'm realizing that I'm just stumbling over my words and it's getting awkward. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and I hope to see you guys soon. Much love. Bye.